attempting to get away with telling such an absurd untruth. When are you going to get out of your student fantasy world? I missed the new employee orientation at my job after saving a pretty female. I told Mr. Smith, the president of the company, what was going on, but he didn't listen and thought I was lying. Then he made fun of me. Even though it sounds like something from a comic book, it wouldn't hurt to double-check the facts. There is no need for a garbage that eats out a female over the firm. You've been fired. He refused to believe me, no matter how much I tried to explain, and I was eventually let go. On the first day I was meant to start working, my career came to an end. Kevin, the HR manager, stormed into the room with a terrified expression as I was in shock and despair. I'm a guy named Brandon, and I recently received my college degree. Although I enjoyed my time in college, I wanted to accomplish as little as possible. I didn't join any groups or sports teams in college, and I only made a small number of friends. In my entire life, I have never had a girlfriend. I was envious as I observed other intelligent and content students. I firmly believed that I was a shadowy figure. Why do I feel so depressed? One day, while riding the train, I pondered over this. In elementary school, I seemed like a normal, cheerful kid. I used to run around the playground with friends during breaks and hang out at friends' houses after school, playing games and having a great time. I remember getting excited about sports days and other events. Perhaps I was happy and fulfilled back then. My middle school years, from 6th to 8th grade, I felt like I spent less and less time with friends. I was still obsessed with games in middle school, and as my classmates began to shift their interest to fashion and music, we had less in common. I even went against the trends on purpose. Still, there were friends from the same elementary school in middle school. There were few, but I had gaming buddies. My social circle started narrowing around this time. I guess in high school, my social circle became even smaller. My middle school gaming friends went to different high schools, and we only occasionally talked or chatted while playing games. Spending more time alone playing games, my social circle shrunk even more. I got caught in this negative cycle. During this period, eventually, even talking to people became a hassle for me. I did work part-time, but spending money on branded items or concerts of popular artists seemed silly. After all, I had no interest in anything but games. In college, my loneliness accelerated. My gaming friends got jobs, and we couldn't find time to meet, so I spent more time alone. I met a few unsociable people like me in the group activities or lectures, but only a handful. While others enjoy their vibrant campus life, I spent 4 years quietly in the background. Thinking about it, it all makes sense. I was too preoccupied with games to join in with my classmates. I didn't try to keep up with their topics. As a result, my social circle became limited, and that's why my gloomy personality formed. So, it's a case of poetic justice. Do good, and good will come to you. Do bad, and bad will come to you. So, if you do nothing, it's only natural that nothing comes back to you. I couldn't make friends because I didn't try. Indeed, it's a well-coined phrase. Listening to the train's clatter, I simultaneously admired the phrase and despised myself. Without any change, I was already 22 years old. As I was about to start my career, I wondered if I could change my gloomy self. Then, strangely, I started to feel excited about it. The only bright spot in my life was getting an offer from a company. Company A is a small electronics manufacturer. I first encountered their products in high school and have been impressed with their quality and design ever since. I literally jumped for joy when I received a job offer from them. No exaggeration. Today, the new employee orientation of Company A is going to be held. I will make a fresh start, and as a member of society, I will abandon the dark, naysaying, pathetic self I have been. Let's be reborn anew. With that resolution, I left home this morning. The venue is in a hall in the city, not too big, since it's not a mega-rich company. I had everything ready from the night before, but I got a bit rushed leaving and will arrive just in time. I'm not going to be late, so it should be fine. That's what I thought, but I got scared because I couldn't see anyone else dressed like me. Maybe I'm heading to the wrong place. Maybe I got the date and time wrong. That's the anxiety that crossed my mind. Once I get off the train, I have to walk to the hall. The station was more crowded than I expected, and now I'm worried about making it on time. Being late to the new employee orientation would be incredibly disrespectful. I checked my phone's map app for the quickest route and hurried along. Is this really the right way? I muttered involuntarily. The route took me far from the main streets through winding back alleys, which made me doubt its accuracy. It was oddly quiet. The hustle and bustle of the city felt far away. It was a strange path. What if I'm late? As I anxiously followed the route guidance, I heard a scream from somewhere. Stop it. It was a woman's voice, not quite mature, but not a child either, maybe around my age. What's that? It was a tone of voice you would never hear in usual life, and I instinctively froze. Stop it. I said, shut up, you little brat. The voices were coming from the next street over. It could be serious trouble. I pressed myself against a wall and peered around the corner apprehensively. No. Let me go. It was clearly a case of a woman being dragged by a man with his face covered by a mask. She had visible injuries on her arm, and her obviously expensive clothes were partially damaged. Well, she's beautiful. No, more like a beautiful girl. I was momentarily mesmerized, but the scream brought me back to reality. Stop it. I had myself scared, but the beautiful girl was being taken into a building. My heart was pounding as if I had run a full marathon. What should I do? Call the police? I asked myself, but quickly realized it was pointless. Even if I called them now, that beautiful girl would not be able to withstand until the police came. She would definitely suffer something terrible. First, muster the courage to save her or pretend I didn't see anything and run away. I had two choices. I cannot do it. There's nothing I can do. That's right. If I butt in, it won't make any difference. I should run away and then report to the police. That's what I thought, and I took a step forward. Let me go, I said. Don't you try to run away. I stopped in my tracks. Don't run away. Of course, those words weren't meant for me, but they stuck in my mind and wouldn't fade away. Don't run away. Muttering this, I remembered my resolution to discard my weak and pathetic self. All right. I'll do it recklessly. I sprang out in front of the man and the beautiful girl. Stop it. I charged at the man, screaming. Maybe because it was so sudden, he couldn't dodge. He flew through the air and plunged headfirst into a nearby dumpster. Let's get out of here. Without waiting for a response, I grabbed the girl's hand and started running towards the station, trying to keep out of sight from him. I led her by the hand and went into the station. Looks like we're safe, I said. He doesn't seem to be following us. Since the man was up to no good, he probably avoided actions that would draw public attention. This gave me some relief. Thank you so much. You really saved me. Thank you. She kept thanking me profusely as we caught our breath from running. Tears were in her eyes. She must have been really scared. Oh, excuse me, your hand. I realized I had been holding her hand since we had started running and quickly let go. I had never been with a girl, let alone held hands with one. Even though it was unintentional, I felt my face getting hot. If you'd like, I can walk you home. That guy might follow us. Sorry to get you into trouble. I'm so sorry. She kept apologizing as I asked her for the nearest station. After 2 transfers, we arrived. She didn't seem to know much about how to take and change the trains. With her fancy attire, maybe she's some kind of rich girl. I asked for her address and followed the route on my cell phone. For about 10 minutes from the station, we arrived at a huge, lavish mansion. To someone like me, living in a tiny, shabby apartment, it looked like a royal palace. Dad. A portly man with a beard was standing at the gate. As soon as she saw him, the girl ran to him, Ava. I was so worried. I'm glad you're safe. Silver. My name is Ava. She jumped into her dad's arms, crying, Right, Dad? I was about to be kidnapped, but this man saved me. After a joyous hug and kiss, Ava said this and gestured toward me with her right hand. Her dad looked at me and said, Oh, is that so? My daughter was in your care. I'd like to thank you properly. How about joining us for dinner? No, it's nothing. Suddenly, I remembered about the orientation. A chill ran down my spine, and I felt my back freeze. My watch pointed to the time. The orientation had already started. I have a prior commitment. Excuse me. I took off my suit jacket because it was getting hot and carried it under my arm as I ran toward the station. Hey, you. Just a few steps away, Ava's dad called out to me. I turned around, thinking what it could be, and saw him holding a shiny black object in his hand. You dropped your pen. Thank you so much. It was my pen. A gift from Company A when I got the job offer. It was elegant, black, with the company name engraved in gold. Goodbye. I took the pen, threw it into my bag, and started running again. Should I have at least told them my name? When I arrived at the orientation venue, it had already finished. Wondering what to do, I wandered around and came across a luxury car in the parking lot. The car stopped right in front of me, and the driver's side window rolled down. Oh, it's you, the driver said, looking puzzled. It was Kevin, the HR manager. I suppose I remembered meeting him at the interview. Sorry, my name is Brandon, a new employee. I'm sorry for being late to the orientation. I just got here. Is that so? Well, what to do? Kevin seemed more amiable than during the interview. He was considering my situation despite my unexcused absence. Suddenly, I heard a voice from the back seat. It's fine, Kevin. Then the rear window began to roll down. Brandon. I was surprised. Sitting in the back was Mr. Smith, the president of Company A. I had been fascinated by the company's products and knew his face and name well, because I had thoroughly checked their website and brochures. The orientation is over for today. Be at the office by 8 p.m. tomorrow, okay? Yes, I understand. I'm very sorry. I apologized to Mr. Smith, but he started rolling up the window midway. Naturally, it seemed I had made him angry. Kevin, drive on. But shouldn't we hear out his circumstances? Just go. I'm busy. I overheard the conversation between Mr. Smith and Kevin. Kevin looked helpless as he nodded to me and rolled up the window. I nodded in return, expressing my apology. Soon, the luxury car drove off into the road. Kevin looked down. I thought for a moment, but considering my own situation, I had no time to worry about others. I felt a sense of despair, or maybe emptiness. Anyway, I was incredibly worried about what would happen from tomorrow onwards. The next day, after the daily morning assembly at work, the instruction was given to the new employees in the office. First, you all need to learn about our products. Here are some magazines related to our products. Please take one each. We were to read the magazine articles, learn from them, and compile a report with our thoughts and what we learned. This was the first task for all the new employees. Once you've written it, bring it to me. If it's okay, spend the rest of the morning reading other articles. Everyone seemed to be struggling, but for me, it was an easy task. I already knew a lot about the company's products, so it was simple. I could probably write the report without even reading the articles. However, I might discover something new, so I decided to skim through them. During the task, I heard yelling from the back of the office. I involuntarily looked in that direction. What the hell are you doing? The one shouting was Kevin. He was sitting in his chair, scolding 3 young female employees. He looked nothing like the Kevin I saw yesterday, almost like a different person, with a scary expression. The women he was yelling at kept putting their heads down, with tears welled up in their eyes. Suddenly, I remembered Ava from yesterday. She too had tearful eyes and put her head down, but it felt different from this. Submit a corrective plan by the day. Yes, they responded, their voices trembling. Kevin gestured with his hand for them to leave, and they dispersed. At the same time, a colleague next to me nudged me with his elbow. I turned to him, and he whispered, "That's the guy from the interview, right? Kevin. He's really scary, isn't he?" "Yeah, he is." "Oh dear. No way." After saying that, he returned to reading his magazine. I secretly glanced at Kevin again, and he was sitting with his elbows on the desk, holding his head. I had just finished writing the report and was about to submit it when the office door banged open, and Mr. Smith appeared, led by senior employees. Everyone stood up. "Oh, it's you, Brandon. Come here for a moment." Yes. I was led to Mr. Smith's office. The luxurious decor and comfortable-looking reception set caught my eye. "You know why you've been called here, don't you?" Mr. Smith sat at the desk, crossing his legs and arms, and began to speak to me. I understood very well why I had been called. It was a concern that kept me up last night. It's about my unexcused absence from yesterday's orientation. That's right. I'm truly sorry. I apologized sincerely. I tried hard to convey my deepest apologies. Eventually, Mr. Smith told me to stop it. "First, tell me the reason. It wasn't oversleeping, was it?" I hesitated a bit. The reason for my absence was like something out of a comic book, but I couldn't lie about it. I decided to be honest. I made up my mind to do so, denied the sleeping over theory, and then began to explain. I was rescuing someone. Jess, a young girl who was almost abducted. I encountered the incident in an alley near the venue and helped her escape, then escorted her home. As I said this, Mr. Smith, still crossing his arms, looked at me with a serious face. After a while, his face began to crumble. Eventually, as if he couldn't hold it back anymore, he burst out laughing loudly. "What an amusing story, Brandon. You missed the ceremony because you were saving a girl from being kidnapped." "Yes, that's hilarious. It's been a while since I laughed this much." Needless to say, his laughter was likely tinged with ridicule. After a good laugh, Mr. Smith returned to a serious expression, though he seemed to be holding back more laughter. "Trying to get away with such a ridiculous lie. When will you stop living in a student fantasy world?" "It's not a lie. Maybe I should have reported it right away, but it seemed harsh to be labeled a liar without any fact-checking. No matter how much I insisted it was true, he wouldn't listen. Is this how you plan to conduct yourself as a professional? A trash who chooses a girl over the company isn't needed. You are fired." For a few seconds, I couldn't comprehend his words. When I did, my body shook, and I broke out in a cold sweat. "Fired? That can't be," I said. "We don't need you. A liar like you will surely hold everyone back. Now leave." My vision blurred with shock. I had finally joined my dream company, Company A, only to be fired. Well, maybe it was inevitable. I had meddled in something unnecessary. I resignedly accepted it and replied, "I got it." Just at that moment, the door to Kevin's office suddenly banged open. "Hey, Sam." It was Kevin, looking quite flustered. His forehead was sweaty. It seemed like no trivial matter. "What's going on?" Kevin, Mr. Smith appeared annoyed at the intrusion, but Kevin was still not composed. "Watch the news, please." The news. Mr. Smith turned on the TV, visibly irked. A large-screen TV came to life, showing a news program about Company B. Hearing the news, Mr. Smith muttered, weakly. Apparently, the daughter of Company B had been missing since the day before yesterday. Company B is a fairly large company, well known enough to be recognized by those who know a little bit about it. "Kevin, contact them immediately." Mr. Smith, finally grasping the situation, panicked along with Kevin. This was crucial because Company B was an essential business partner for Company A. Currently, for quality reasons, a specific material was exclusively purchased from Company B. In other words, if something happened to Company B, it would spell trouble for Company A too. Breaking news. Now, as this announcement came from the TV, the three of us focused on the screen. It turned out that the missing daughter of Company B had been safely found yesterday. According to interviews with those involved, such stress is poison to the body. Indeed it is. Mr. Smith and Kevin said this as if they had narrow escapes. They must have felt significantly relieved. What? Brandon still here? I told you were fired. Now leave immediately. Oh, and Mr. Smith's words shocked Kevin. Why was he so surprised? He must know I skipped the orientation. Thank you for everything. I offered a token greeting and dejectedly left Kevin's office. As we passed each other, Kevin murmured, "Fired." It looked like he had a bitter taste in his mouth. Right after I left Mr. Smith's office, a female office worker hurried in. She seemed to have something to tell Mr. Smith. "Mr. Smith, a guest has arrived." A guest? I wasn't expecting anyone. Who is it, and where are they from? Yes, it's Mr. Hamilton from Company B. I was surprised. He is the president of Company B. I knew his name from the news just now. What incredible timing. But it's none of my business now. While my colleagues were finishing their reports, I was packing my things. The guy next to me asked what happened, but I didn't feel like telling the truth. Just a little issue, I said with a forced smile. Just as I was about to leave, I heard Mr. Smith's voice from the corridor. You mean one of my employees? Then I heard another familiar voice. Yes, definitely someone from your company. As I looked towards the sound, the office door banged open again. Mr. Smith appeared, followed by a portly man with a beard. Our eyes met momentarily. Oh, he's that man, the one carrying that bag. I remembered him. He was the man from the large mansion I visited yesterday, the girl's father. That man. Mr. Smith was visibly shocked, struggling to find words. I was also struggling to grasp the situation. Yes, I would very much like to speak with him. All right, Brandon, come here. Smith beckoned me, and I was led to a reception room next to the office. Listening more closely, it turned out that the girl's father was Mr. Hamilton, the president of Company B. So, the girl mentioned in the news was Ava, and unknowingly, I had been involved in her disappearance. I heard from my daughter. Brandon, you were very brave, he said. No. Well, my heart was racing. What had I done? I had unwittingly become involved in a news-making incident due to a whim. I wasn't regretting it, but I was utterly bewildered. I couldn't talk about the incident as it was under investigation, but apparently, Ava was targeted for a kidnapping, presumably for ransom, and I had stumbled upon it, leading to this moment. I look forward to your future achievements, Brandon. Mr. Hamilton said this with a hearty laugh. Mr. Smith also laughed along exaggeratedly. But how did they know I was at Company A? Right after that thought, I remembered dropping a commemorative pen Company A gave me in front of the mansion. Of course, they must have seen the company name engraved on it. If there are people like Brandon at your company, I would certainly like to build a good relationship, Mr. Hamilton said, smiling as he shook hands with Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith was again smiling in an exaggerated manner, but I was still being fired. I hesitated to speak up, but since I was being fired anyway, I felt no need to respect Mr. Smith. Well, let's just say it. I regret to inform you that I'm resigning from the company today. I had a discussion with Mr. Smith just now. You're resigning? Mr. Hamilton asked in surprise, his eyes widening significantly, looking quite shocked, which made me feel sorry. Ah, Brandon, calm down. It was just a joke. No need to take it seriously, Mr. Smith said in a rushed and awkward attempt to backpedal, but I didn't listen. Excuse me, But I will take my leave here, since I'm a trash who chose a girl over the company," I said, quoting Mr. Smith's words, and stood up. He tried to grab my hand to stop me, but he just barely missed. "Brandon," Mr. Hamilton called out to me. When I turned around, he gestured with his open palms, silently asking me to wait. "Mr. Smith, what does Brandon mean by what he just said?" Mr. Smith was flustered and at a loss for words, so I explained to Mr. Hamilton on his behalf about how yesterday was my orientation day, how I missed it because I was helping Ava, and how I was told and fired for choosing a girl over the company. As I spoke, Mr. Hamilton's face turned increasingly red. "Mr. Smith, I'm so sorry. I had no idea his story was true and that the girl was your daughter." Mr. Smith was now apologizing deeply to Mr. Hamilton, but Mr. Hamilton's anger didn't subside. "It's not because she's my daughter. I never thought that you were such a heartless man. I'll take back what I said earlier. We will have to reconsider our dealings with your company. For Company B, losing a small company like A probably wouldn't matter much, but for Company A, losing business with Company B could be the end." Knowing this, Mr. Smith clung to Mr. Hamilton, but he was completely ignored. "Brandon, sorry for the delay, but let me introduce myself properly," Mr. Hamilton said, handing me his business card. "Company B President Paul Hamilton." On my second day as a new grad, I received an impressive business card. "I'm sorry, I'm just a new employee and don't have a business card yet." "Is that so? Then may I have your phone number? I would like to thank you properly at a later date." "Certainly." Thinking it rude to refuse, I gave him my phone number. "Well, I must take my leave now since I'm fired. I'll be leaving too." We both left the reception room. Mr. Smith tried to reach out to us, but both Mr. Hamilton and I just gave him a cold look without saying a word. Without extending a hand, he was crying uncontrollably, soaking the floor with his tears. It was a pitiful sight. In the hallway, I crossed paths with Kevin. He looked at me with a sad expression and slightly nodded. He had been a strange person since yesterday. While thinking this, I nodded back and left. A few days later, while lounging at home, I received a call. It was from Mr. Hamilton. "Hello. This is Brandon. This is Paul Hamilton. Thank you for the other day." After some standard small talk, the conversation moved to the main topic. "I'd like to invite you to my house. My daughter also wants to properly thank you." I was surprised by the unexpected invitation, recalling the grand mansion I had seen that day. The mansion in my memory might be somewhat glorified, but thinking of going there again made me nervous. "Yes, I'll come." "Good. We'll be expecting you." It felt awkward to be thanked, but respecting their wishes, I decided to visit their house. Upon arriving at the Hamilton residence, it was indeed a breathtakingly grand mansion. When I rang the bell and announced my name, a housekeeper came to greet me. I didn't feel out of place, but then I realized that having a housekeeper meant they lived in a completely different world from me. The hallway was adorned with numerous decorations, almost like a museum. Feeling intimidated, I followed the housekeeper until I saw Mr. Hamilton at the end of the corridor. "I've been waiting for you. Thank you for inviting me today." I was led to the living room, where the lavish interior struck me as even more opulent than the hallway. Having compared the hallway to a museum, I was at a loss for words to describe the living room. "Brandon," Ava said from the back of the room. Dressed in a magnificent gown, she appeared stunning. She wasn't literally glowing, but she was undeniably beautiful. The thought of having held her hand made my face heat up again. We had a splendid lunch that was incredibly delicious, but as an ordinary person, I didn't even know the names of most dishes. "By the way, Brandon," Mr. Hamilton said, sounding a bit more intimate than before, "what do you think of my daughter?" "What do you mean?" "I would very much like you to be my son-in-law." "A son-in-law? Oh, no way." "Dad, wait." It was undoubtedly a happy proposition, but being the first time in my 22 years of life to hear such a thing, I could only laugh, unable to react otherwise. I'm still the same, hesitant. Well, think about it. Yes, I will definitely consider it positively, I thought in my mind, and my face heated up again. I couldn't help but notice that Ava also seemed to be blushing. I stayed until dusk and then decided it was time to leave. Considering the time, I couldn't avoid the packed trains, which made me feel a bit depressed. As I was heading toward the gate, a luxurious car was parked outside. Come on, Brandon, get in. This was apparently Mr. Hamilton's private driver, and he was offering to drive me home. I appreciated their warm hospitality and thankfully accepted the kind offer. Thank you for the meal. Come again any time. Ava will be waiting, as Mr. Hamilton said that. Ava, standing beside him, raised her hand slightly and smiled gently before speaking. See you again, Brandon. That night, my heart raced until I fell asleep. A few days later, I received a call from Company A. Reluctantly, I answered. Hello, this is Kevin from Company A. When I asked what he wanted, he said he had something to discuss and wanted me to come to the office the next day. Honestly, I didn't want to go. I think Company A's products are great, but as long as Mr. Smith is there, I had no desire to be part of their circle. I'm sorry, but I was fired. Please, I really need to talk to you. This isn't something Mr. Smith is involved in. He insisted it was a personal request from him, not related to Mr. Smith. After several refusals, he persuaded me, and I reluctantly agreed to go. I had no hard feelings towards Kevin, after all. The next day, I arrived at 8 a.m. and attended the morning assembly. I could feel my former colleagues' stares. Now, Kevin, please continue. Yes, Kevin stepped onto the stage. I noticed that Mr. Smith was nowhere to be seen. He usually sat by the stage, crossing his arms and legs. Suddenly, Kevin said, I must apologize to all of you. He said this out of the blue and removed the microphone from the stand. I'm truly, truly sorry. His voice and look expressed his sincere apology. It was so unexpected that I couldn't comprehend what was happening. The employees were also confused and started murmuring. Kevin then explained the situation. I have been terrible to all of you. It was surprising. He always seemed soft-spoken and humble, a kind person. I thought that's why it felt so odd to see him yelling in the office. I've yelled, kicked desks and chairs, and used foul language. No matter how much I apologize, I can't shake off the shame. Apparently, he had been treated like a puppet by Mr. Smith. Kevin knew that such methods were not right. However, whenever it was discovered he wasn't following Mr. Smith's directions, he was inevitably docked pay. It was almost like being under surveillance. I have a family, a wife and children to support. I had no choice but to follow his orders, Kevin said through tears, explaining how he had to keep quiet to avoid pay cuts. I'm deeply sorry. He apologized again. He really seemed like a good person, just as I had thought. I remembered his helpless face on the day of the orientation, the way he held his head in distress, the bitter expression on his face, the sad look when he lowered his head in the hallway. All these must have been his true feelings showing through. This must be the result of his conscience revealing itself while obeying Mr. Smith. As I watched him on the stage after the morning assembly, Kevin and other executives personally informed me that my dismissal had been revoked. Kevin, in particular, when he spoke with me during the third round of interviews, had recommended me for the position, saying that he would love to hire me. By the way, where is Mr. Smith? He hasn't been around this morning. I was okay with returning to Company A, but honestly, I had planned to refuse if he was still there. Oh, that's not a problem. Well, it is a problem in a way, Kevin responded. Apparently, more misfortune had befallen Mr. Smith. On the day I was fired, there had been a whistleblower, and it came to light that Mr. Smith had been embezzling company funds. He was arrested a few days ago and had stepped down from his position by his own decision. Now someone else from the executives was serving as the president. We want to change the company for the better and need your help to do that. With Mr. Smith gone, I accepted the revocation of my dismissal. A fresh start, I thought, recalling my determination on the morning of the orientation. A few months later, I was visiting Mr. Hamilton's house after work. I had been invited for dinner and had been meeting them like this once a week. Ava and I had become an official couple with her parents' approval over the past few months. "Thank you so much for continuing business with our company," I said. "I can't just abandon a company where Brandon is," he chuckled. We chatted while dining with Ava, her father, and her mother. Ideally, I'd prefer dinner alone with Ava, but she's still afraid to go out. Besides, I doubt I could satisfy Miss Ava with any place I choose. We spent some time talking in her room after supper. She is so charming that I can't believe she picked someone like me. They offered a vehicle trip once more as they were departing. As the car began to move, I waved goodbye to all three of them while looking up at the starry sky through the glass. I questioned whether, as a recent graduate, I had changed in any way. I'd advanced enough to have a girlfriend, at least. That day, I decided to aid her instead of fleeing. I now have these contacts as a result. It's a case of poetic justice, an invented phrase, because former President Mr. Smith lost everything due to his avarice. The words, which promise to make sure I don't lose what I've finally won, impressed me. I swore under the stars that I would keep making wise decisions.